Be still and know that I am God. It's a Bible verse we see on coffee mugs, t-shirts, whenever you go to Walmart to the Christian book section. And the verse often paints a picture of going to a lake or the beach by yourself and just sitting and being still and quiet, and in that peaceful moment thinking about God and seeing God and creation and all of the rest. But I want to take this verse and just show you that it relates now to our situation, to lockdown week 6 and the coronavirus, so much more than it does sitting at the lakeside. Psalm 46 is known as the Psalm of Trouble. And Psalm 46:10 is the verse that I just quoted for you. We find that this psalm is often used to paint a picture of peace and tranquility, at least verse 10 is, but the context of Psalm 46 is the war between the southern nation or kingdom of Judah, Israel now having split into 2 kingdoms, and the nation of Assyria. We find this story in 2 Kings chapter 18 and 19, where the writer of 2 Kings tells us that the nation of Assyria, the army of Assyria, has come and surrounded the southern kingdom of Judah, and actually more like the city of Jerusalem, as all of Judah has gone to the city walls for safety. They're sheltering in place, if you will, much like what we're doing right now, but for different reasons. And as they are sitting inside those city walls, Hezekiah is trying to figure out, he's the king, he's trying to figure out a way to get the Assyrian army to leave. He goes into the temple and he scrapes off the gold from Solomon's temple, and he gives that to the Assyrian army to hope that would just appease them so they leave, but it doesn't. So what Hezekiah does what we often do. He goes into the temple, or goes to the Lord in prayer, and he asks God to answer. And that night God sends first Isaiah the prophet, and Isaiah goes to Hezekiah and he says, I've answered you. God's going to answer your prayer. He's heard you, and he's going to bring deliverance. And that night, the angel of the Lord, which is Jesus in the Old Testament, the pre-incarnate Christ, he comes and he kills 185,000 enemy soldiers, enemies of Judah. And what happens is, the next morning, Hezekiah and God's people get up and they go to the city gates. They go to the walls and they look out at the Assyrian army. And what they see is a vast number of the Assyrian soldiers dead. And what Hezekiah does is he looks and he sees God's deliverance. He sees God's answer to his prayer specifically. And one of the sons of Korah, a musician, now writes Psalm 46. And I want to start reading in verse 8. He says, "Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations he has brought on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire." We read these words now with a picture of an enemy destroyed, an enemy defeated, and God being the one that brings the victory. And now verse 10 makes more sense. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress." We read those words now and seeing that God is telling his people, God is telling us to be still and know, or be still and learn to know that he is God through what he's doing, not necessarily in times of peace, but in times of chaos, in times that are outside the normal, that are different than what we're used to. And as I read these words, it teaches me 2 things. Number 1 is God is calling us to be still in the times, not just of peace when we have time to be still, but take time to be still in the midst of situations that are different, that are abnormal, that are flipped upside down, if you will. Just like Hezekiah and Judah being inside the city walls for protection, we're staying inside our homes to some degree for protection. And we can use these opportunities to be still. And it's in this moment of stillness that we can learn to know that he is God. And we can learn to know not necessarily by what we're doing for him, though that might be our tendency, but learn to know that he is God by what he is doing, how he's bringing deliverance, how he's answering prayers, how he is working. My encouragement for you this week is to allow yourself to be still. Allow yourself to be still and know that He is God. So make sure you subscribe in the link below so that you can get the newest episode every Monday. And remember, life is better with Jesus.